So let's begin then. We'll start off with the INFJs and the ENFJs. Now, the INFJs often do not enjoy public speaking, whereas the ENFJs sometimes do. So the INFJs can be a little intimidated when there's a room full of strangers. But they are comfortable when speaking in a smaller group setting. Now, this personality type tends to have a slight perfectionist nature. So they can overthink things pretty easily, and they tend to weigh every action. They worry about how people perceive them. And because they've got that feeling part of them and the intuitive part of them, they really do prefer to be around smaller groups in order to do presentations. Now, the INFJ is rarely shy. They like to be around folks in social settings. Even though they might slightly dislike public speaking, because they're perfectionists and they fear of messing up, but they do want to do their best and they do want to present themselves well. And especially if they have a cause or if it's something that they're passionate about, they will be amazing speakers, both the INFJ and the ENFJ. But you do have to get beyond that feeling of perfection. I don't know if you've heard of Voltaire, but Voltaire once said, never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. INFJs and ENFJs tend to want to be perfect, but public speaking is not a perfect science. It is actually called an art. Therefore, expect that things may not go as planned, but it's okay. If you can accept the fact that they may not go as planned, you'll be okay speaking in front of a small gathering. And that's your preference. If it's a large crowd, both the INFJ and the ENFJ will be quite intimidated. But again, when we get to the end of this course, I'm going to emphasize the fact that no matter what, if you're called to do it, then you can do it. So let's talk a little bit now that we have completed all of the personality types, and we've talked about how those personality types are as public speakers and what are some of the things that the personality types can do to become more effective or better public speakers. Have you heard of an ambivert? What is an ambivert? Well, we know that introverts are folks that are more internally focused. Introverts tend to be types that people think of as shy. And I know, being an introvert myself, I'm not shy. But an introvert is somebody that gets their energy from being alone, from being or thinking or developing skills inside of themselves and then putting it out to the world. The extrovert, on the other hand, enjoys the interaction. They enjoy being in social situations and they get their energy from being in social situations. The ambivert is the balance of the two. The ambivert is a person who has a balanced introvert, extrovert personality type. What this means is that they could go either way. They enjoy social settings, although I would say ambiverts do not enjoy huge crowds for long periods of time, but they can certainly enjoy being in a crowd or being in a situation where there are lots of people there. And so they feel comfortable speaking in a crowd. They feel comfortable speaking in a small group. They're balanced. The ambivert tends to or could seem like an introvert at times and seem like an extrovert at other times. This person enjoys public speaking and may sometimes have to be asked to speak, but when they do speak, they can speak well. Now, to end this course, the one thing that I always leave you with in terms of public speaking is that no matter what, no matter your personality type, no matter what the circumstance is, if you're going to be doing a speech, there are things that you must do. And so, first and foremost, as I've said throughout this presentation, no matter what type of personality type you are, you must know your material. If you want to appear credible and if you want to appear confident, you must know what you're talking about. If you don't, you'll find that your audience will disengage quickly, or during the question and answer period, they will definitely ask you, or they will poke holes in your speech, and that will lead to a deflated feeling and a lack of confidence for the next time you have to speak. So do your research, guys. Don't go, especially the perceiving types, don't go unprepared to a speech. Understand how to engage your audience, and what this means is that you must take a look at your audience and see how your audience is responding to you. If your audience is getting bored, if you find that they're looking away, looking at their phones, talking to each other, you have got to pivot. And what that means is if you're speaking in a low tone, raise your tone. If it means that you are an extrovert and you're comfortable engaging your audience, ask the audience a question, especially if it's not a large crowd. Ask them a question. Wait on them to answer it. This way, you're putting the onus on your audience to respond and re-engage with you. Engage your audience. Always take a look at the audience, take a look at their nonverbal body language to see if they're engaged. You'll know if they're engaged. They're leaning forward, they're giving you eye contact, they're nodding their heads. If they're disengaged, you'll know, re-engage your audience. And then, before you give your speech, practice, practice, practice. Practice the speech. Do not read it verbatim unless it is mandated that you do so. Otherwise, practice the speech. Practice it in front of a mirror. Practice it by recording it. Practice it to a small live audience of your peers who can give you some good feedback. But practice, practice, practice. And then know your audience. Before you give your speech, ask whomever it is who's asked you to speak who your audience is comprised of. What is the demographics of your audience, meaning the makeup of your audience? Do you have folks of your age, older, younger, in between? Do you have different ethnicities, races, cultural differences, um, sexual orientation differences than yourself or your own orientation? Make sure that you know who you're speaking to. Never do a generic speech. Never do a one size fits all speech. Do a speech that is tailored to your specific audience. Do use presentation aids. By this I mean slides, PowerPoint slides, Google slides, um, And if you don't use slides, you don't have to use slides. Use pictures, use charts, use graphs, and you can even use interactives like quizzes and the like. But use presentation and props. If you're talking about a cell phone, bring a cell phone in. If you're talking about something that is tangible, bring it to the audience, pass it around, but don't pass it around um, at a time when you're speaking and you really need to be engaged with your audience. Let your audience know that you'll be passing it around after you've finished with your speech during the question and answer period, or pass it around before. Remember, if you have a prop and you pass it around during your speech, your audience may become disengaged. But definitely use presentation aids. And don't apologize, guys. And what I mean by this is, obviously, if you screwed up, if you've messed up, you do want to make sure that you have clarified or you've let your audience know that you need to restate something. But you don't necessarily have to apologize. Every time you apologize, you take the energy, the positive energy away from yourself. So let your audience know. I need to go back to my previous point. I need to restate some things. I need to clarify some things. Or you might say to your audience, especially if you're an extrovert, is there anything that I've said that's confusing, or have I confused you in any way? Is there a point that I need to clarify for you before I move forward? So come from a position of strength, and when you do, your audience will appreciate it, and so will you. You will feel positive still, and you will be in a positive state of mind. Um, and that helps by not saying, "Oh my God, I screwed up. I'm sorry. I apologize." There are other ways to handle that. And finally, relax, guys. Relax. If you know your material, if you've engaged your audience, if you've practiced, if you know who your audience is and you're speaking specifically to that audience, and you found presentation aids that match your audience and that they will respond to, and you're using your positive energy, you can relax because you can be yourself. And please, 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 please don't try to be anybody else but yourself. Now remember to use conversational language. Speak to the level of your audience. If you're speaking to high school students, don't speak to them as if you're speaking to somebody who's in your business circle or some other audience. Speak to the audience in the language that they will understand. Use conversational language. Use an outline as your guide. And in my course in becoming an effective public speaker, I've given you 2 free outlines to use as your guide. Use an outline as your guide. And be knowledgeable. Be knowledgeable helps you to appear credible. When you appear credible, you appear confident and you feel confident. So be knowledgeable. Now, if you do this, you've got this. You too can overcome your fear of public speaking. Take good care, guys.